So today we're going to talk briefly about measure entry for course objectives in a course that you're teaching. There are a couple of things that you may want to have before you begin. The first is, of course, to be logged into Taskstream with the courses that you're teaching set up before you. Once you go to the home screen, the home menu, the courses will be right there for you, or should be. If they're not, you can always contact me and I'll add permissions. The other thing that you may want to have access to is perhaps the rubric that you plan to use for a given assignment or a given course objective, and we'll get to that in just a minute here. And those two things alone should just about be enough to start for the time being. So you want to go to the course that you're going to add measures for, and you're going to go to the course assessment workspace. On the left-hand side, you'll notice that each semester has its own workspace. You'll want to go to the semester that you plan on adding measures for. So fall 2017 assessment cycle. You want to go to the course assessment plan. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have an instructor who, let me just get out of there real quick. If you're fortunate enough to have an instructor who is kind of a point person for a shared course, or you have a chair who is a point person for a shared course, then you may find that the mission statement and the objectives have been copied over already from a previous semester. If that's the case and you have measures already here, then all you have to do is kind of look at them, update the CRN, and you should be all set to go. But what we're doing today is we're discussing measure entry for instructors who have not taught the course yet, perhaps, or their measure hasn't been copied over for some reason. The first thing that you want to do is check out the workspace. Okay. Now that you have the workspace checked out, you can make changes. You can add new measures if you want to, or edit and remove measures that were added by other instructors, and that's something that we would not want to do, right? It has been done accidentally in the past. People believe that they're editing their own measure. Just make sure that you're adding a new measure. But before you add a new measure, the best thing to do is, in my opinion, copy and paste the course objective, as I've done here, into a notepad. And then also consider copying and pasting the content from one of the instructors who has a measure here into Notepad as well, just so you kind of have a basic reference. I would encourage you to look through the ones that are there and pick the strongest one, the one that's more detail oriented. Copy that over so that you have a reference point. So we're going to add a new measure, and already we have the measure title is being asked of us. Now the measure title basically is just asking you what kind of assignment are you giving your student to check student proficiency in this objective. So the objective is to produce coherent text within common college level written forms. First, I would consider looking at the measure type or method. Are you looking at a student artifact like an essay, an exam, a portfolio, or something else? For most English courses, the measure type or method is a student artifact. It's typically a paper. Now the instructor whose measure I copied and pasted is an argumentative essay. You don't have to use the same exact essay type that they do. In fact, you may use something completely different. You might use a portfolio that's comprehensive and looks at everything from the entire semester. For the purpose of this assignment, I would use probably an exploratory research paper. So rather than being heavily steeped in argument and trying to make an argument for a specific position, this research paper may just look into a topic to answer a question, a central question. Now we have to get into the details and description. Now the details and description are basically one part of the details and description is the assignment guidelines to a degree. Just kind of keep them brief if you possibly can. You'll see in the example here, students will write a 5 to 7 page researched argumentative essay A rubric is used to grade the students. Copy that in, but we're just using a exploratory essay. Very minor difference there. You'll see, though, that this instructor has also added this. The rubric section grammar and sentence structure will be used to assess this objective. Total possible points in this rubric section is 20 out of 100. They want 70% of the students to earn a minimum of 10 out of 20 points on this rubric component. For me, my rubric's a little bit different. If you don't have a rubric, you can always utilize the rubric that another instructor has. You can look at the AACU value rubrics. You can ask for assistance developing a rubric for a specific assignment. I have a rubric developed for this particular assignment. I'll try to expand the screen a little bit. And you can see here that I already have the objectives lined up with 3 separate areas on the rubric. This one totals in 4 points, this one's 4 points again, and then 3. So 11 points in total out of 20 points for the entire rubric. Okay. So instead of 1 area on the rubric, I have 3 categories on the research paper rubric are used to measure, and we're just going to have the course objective here. Okay. So I've stipulated that I have 3 categories on my rubric that measure the objective. Total point value for these 3 categories is, I know you're not supposed to use a verb like this in coordination with a colon, but I'm just going to do it anyways. 11 points. Okay, and I'll just show you that one more time over here. We've got 3 points for the first criteria, 4 for the second criteria, and 4 for the third criteria. And there's no more for that specific course objective. Now we get on to the target. What do we like students to do? 70% is usually a pretty safe number. It means that the majority of the students have demonstrated some basic degree or measure of proficiency in the class. It's been kind of the baseline number that we've suggested all faculty use. So 70% of students will score. And you have to look again at the rubric and determine, based upon this. Right? So proficiency is 2 points, proficiency is 3 points, and proficiency is 3 to 2. So we want to go with the minimum here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for basic proficiency. So we'll score 7 out of 11 points in these rubric categories. And then we're all set to go, right? Implementation line, well, it's fall 2017. The instructor, well, you don't want to put your actual name in there. And then the CRNs, which you can find on Blackboard or you can find in the course listings typically. You apply the changes, and then you will see yours right here. And there you have it. You have selected the course objective, you've selected add a new measure, and you have added the measure title, you've added the measure type, you've added the details and description, you've added the rubric categories that relate directly to this objective, and you've added your target. Now, a few brief questions that folks ask. Do they have to have specific rubric categories mapped to a given course objective? Well, there are some faculty members who use an entire rubric for a specific course objective, and that's perfectly acceptable as well. There are a multitude of ways to measure a given course objective, and if you have any questions, you can always ask. All right, I hope that does the trick, folks. Thank you so much for your time.